and welcome. Today's video is going to be something a little different, and we're going to be showing off another Star Trek ship here. I usually show off my personal builds every time I get another 100 subscribers, but I was a little late on this one because it wasn't quite done yet. So today, we're going to be looking at this New Orleans class starship, USS Kyushu, which was a background ship in Star Trek The Next Generation, seen for like 3 seconds on screen here. So we'll take a look at the full outside and do a full interior tour, because this whole ship is built on the inside. So here's a quick look underneath at the deflector dish here. Now I don't have world edit or anything like that, so this ship was entirely built by hand, and it probably took between 3 and 4 months to do. I wanted to do the Enterprise D from The Next Generation, but if I was to build that at scale, it probably would have taken me more than a year to do in just filling endless rooms because it's so massive. So I decided to build its smaller cousin here. We'll come up top and take a quick look back here. And you can see the shuttle bay down there. And here's one of the weapons pods, because this ship was a kit bash and it has these pods, 2 on top and 1 on bottom. There's the window down into the bridge. But before we go inside, we'll take a quick look at a cross section I've prepared. So here's the ship split right in half down the center, so you can see everything is all connected and the whole thing is full. You can see the multi-story shuttle bay right here and the bridge up here. And you'll see when we get inside, I'm quite proud with how some of these interiors turned out. Back here we see the warp core running the height of the ship. Now I didn't use any official deck plans for this, I just kind of winged it and made up my whole interior. There's the weapons pod down on bottom, and the rest of the engineering hall. Now another thing I've experimented with in this build is using map art to make the computer screens, which makes this build a lot cooler. Here's the inside of the warp nacelle with all the coils here. And there's the back of the neck here. That's where the impulse engine is. You can see its engine bay right behind the warp core there. And now we'll start touring the interior. So we'll come in through this airlock up here, right on top. Right through here, there's like a supply locker. And here is an example of my map art computers. I accidentally deleted one there. And if we come through here, this comes out right on the main bridge, which I modeled after the Enterprise D's bridge. And I was pretty proud of how this turned out. There's the view screen up there. Here's the more computers where they pilot the ship. And the 3 stairs surrounded by the wooden rail. Here's the captain's chair. We come up on this upper level. Here's the weapons stations back here. And the aft bridge stations. Then we'll come down here because there's all kinds of doors off here. Here's the captain's ready room. He has a little couch in here, some seats. He has a desk here, and his own window out into the space, and a little fish tank. In here he has a replicator and a little bathroom. When we come back out, and we'll come across here. On this side, There's a little lounge area where bridge crew could take their breaks and look out at the stars. And then there's a bathroom in here. And we'll come back out onto the bridge here. This back door up here leads to the conference room. Here's the conference room with the big observation windows looking out on the back of the saucer section here. And they have their big table where they have their meetings. Then through this door, there's a little ramp down to deck 2 here, which doesn't have much. This is the bridge life support center. So we have a generator, some batteries, and some atmosphere processors here. This turbo lift will go back up here, and it's the backup turbo lift leading to the bridge here. And we'll take a quick look up at the ceiling detail here with that big window on the top. Then there's one more door. This is the main bridge turbo lift. And we'll go down into the actual ship here. So we already saw everything that was on deck 2, and we'll come to deck 3. Back here is the main shuttle bay. And it's fairly large. You can see on this side we have one type of shuttlecraft here. And this leads right outside. And on the other side there's a different type of shuttlecraft. Now these big shuttles also have an interior here. So here's the inside of the shuttlecraft. And the other one has a slightly different interior. So that's the inside of the shuttles here. Over here we have a little shuttle pod. And in here we have 2 little work bees. Now here's the shuttle elevator. And as you can see, the shuttle bay complex is multiple stories here. It's 3 floors. But we'll check out those when we get to those decks. And here I realized much too late I skipped a deck, so we're gonna have a jump cut here. Back in the deck 3 turbo lift here. Right here we have turbo lift maintenance. So this is where the turbo lift cars can come right out of the tubes to be worked on here. And all these are supposed to be the actual turbo lift cars. And they have a machine shop in here for working on that. And we'll come back here. And we'll come out on the deck 3 proper. That's that same turbo lift maintenance room. And if we come down here, we have the transporter rooms. So this is the transporter room here. Here's the actual transporter pad. And if we come down this little access tunnel, in here we have the transporter pattern buffer. And this is obviously modeled off the next generation's transporter room. Move on. There's another transporter room, exactly the same, just mirrored on the other side. There's a bathroom and some emergency supplies there. We're going to be skipping a lot of this because some of these rooms repeat a lot. Now the corridors on this ship turned out a lot better than the corridors on my last ship I built. We'll come see what's here. Here we have the main sick bay. In the center we have the big scanner bed, and then all the patient beds around it here. And if we come through here, here's the Chief Medical Officer's office. Through here's another patient ward with more beds in case of overflow. And a little medical lab where they replicate the medicines here. So that's the main sick bay here. And we'll come back out. As we come down this corridor here, we're going to come to the air traffic control room. That's supposed to be like a hologram. Here's where the air traffic controllers sit, and that's where they would direct shuttles coming and going to the ship. And then this corridor comes right back out into the shuttle bay there. And we'll speed up this walking here, because a lot of the rooms we're going to see on this deck are repetitive of things we'll see later. Over here, we have the ship's classroom. Not much there. And we'll move on here. This is where we were before, actually. If we come around this little hallway, here's the ship's barber, because the ship would need one so people could get their hair cut. And that's pretty much it for what's on this deck. The other side just has another sick bay and more transporter rooms, but mirrored. So we'll jump cut back to where we were originally at. So now we're back where we were before the jump cut, and this is one of the main biggest decks. Right here in the center, we have the computer core. And here's the outside of it. And you can actually go inside the computer core as well, because this was seen in the show. And there's these main rooms to access the computer. And this is actual multiple stories in here. And that's what this ladder's for. The computer core comes down another deck and there's another control room. But we'll go back up to the deck we're on here. And up here, this is coming straight forward through the middle of the ship. And here's one of my favorite interiors I built here on the other side of this spare room. This is stellar cartography, which was seen in the movie Generations. And this is a huge 3-story room with a holographic map of the star system they're in. And down here, there's the little holo projector at the bottom. And these stars were originally done with map art, but once the update came and we got the sculpt blocks, this looked a lot more like stars, so I replaced them all. And that's supposed to be the planet they're surveying, so I was pretty happy with how this room came out. And we'll come all the way to the front of the ship here. Here's a mess hall. There's a bar here where you can get food and drinks, and all kinds of seating and tables here, and these massive windows looking out the front of the ship here. And this is the upper one. There's more than one of these. And we'll move on from the mess hall. And we'll head down a different corridor here. In here we have a crew quarters. And this is pretty much what the generic crew quarters look like. There's a living room area, a replicator, a little bathroom with a shower here. And this is crew quarters for someone who would have a family with them, as it has multiple sleeping spaces. Then across here, we have holodeck generators. So here's the power supply for the holodecks. And we'll move on. Down here we have the holodeck servers, which are running all the computer programs for the holodeck. Right here we have an example of a Jeffries tube, because they're always crawling around in the show to fix things. We have some power couplings in this room here. So that's the little maintenance area and the Jeffries tube, and we'll move on. On this outer ring, we have the officers' quarters, and these are bigger, and they have the big windows looking out into space. They have their own bathroom. A table, a sitting area, a replicator, and a bedroom here. And all these officers' quarters are pretty much the same. Each one is just slightly different because it goes around the outer edge of the hull, and based on the shape of the hull, they had to be tweaked. So like here's another one that has many of the same things, but just shaped slightly different based on the hull curve. Over here we have structural integrity field generators that help keep the ship together. And we'll keep moving down this corridor here. Here's yet another example of officers' quarters. This one looks a little more coherent because the hull shape was more straight there. And right here, more holodeck servers. Then we'll shoot back up this corridor here. Over here, we have solid waste processing, because everything gets recycled and used for the replicators here. Lots of systems rooms on this ship. Across from there, more holodeck generators, which we'll see the holodeck soon enough here. Here's some more crew quarters here. Over here we have matter storage tanks, and these are all the tanks of different kinds of matter for use by the replicators here. And this is a fairly big room. And we'll move on here. More crew quarters we just passed, and stuff we've already seen before. So we're gonna head this way. Here we have one of the science labs where they do experiments. And these chambers here are where they can do it in safety and close these areas off with a force field. So that's the science lab. Come around the corner here. This whole right hand side is just more officers' quarters, so we won't look at those. They're just more of the same. And we'll keep on cruising here. Over here we have one of the shield generators. And that's what the shield generator looks like. And we'll keep moving. This next room is the main tractor beam generator. So these are the machines that actually generate the tractor beams that the ship uses to tow things around. Over here, more officers' quarters. Here's an emergency supply room. There's spacesuits and lockers full of stuff. Here is the second level of the shuttle bay, accessed from the other side on this deck here. And you can see there's a bunch more shuttles parked down in here, and some more shuttle pods. Over here is the fueling station where they fuel the shuttles. There's the fuel tank. So we're at the back of the saucer section now. Then here is the deuterium pump room. Basically, the ship's fuel pumps. And over here, we have some generators, which would be used to supply power to start the warp core. And we'll come back around onto the starboard side here. Here's the phaser range. This is where you would program it. These lockers have the weapons in it. And this was seen in the show, where they stood in this circle and shot at all these colored balls of light flying around here, which I just use buttons to represent. So we'll come back out of here. Here's the security office, where the chief security officer would do his work. And then through here is the main security briefing room, where they would gather the whole department and have their meetings. And then we'll come back out over here. Trying to orientate myself here. This comes back out into the shuttle bay parking area on the side of it. But we'll actually go the other way here. Here's more holodeck servers. Here's a gangway down to the next deck, so just a big stairwell. And more holodeck generators. Here's an emergency battery room with a bunch of batteries to supply power if main power and everything was down. Here's the Stellar Cartography Department's conference room, where they can have their meetings. And actually, we're going to come back down this way, because I think we missed one room out here. Here's a locker room and shower room for the enlisted people, because their barracks actually don't have bathrooms in them. Another shower room, and here's the main brig. There's a little desk, and here's the holding cell. This is where they would put the prisoner, and around here is where the force field will appear to keep them in. And we'll come around here. Right now we're on the starboard side of the saucer section, on top, heading towards the front. There's another spare room. More officers' quarters, an emergency generator. More officers' quarters, and this is the robotics lab. And this is based on the room from the show where Data built an android daughter. Then we'll move on here. We have another little Jeffries tube section here, leading to more maintenance areas. And officers' quarters. And that dead ends, so we'll turn around and go back. Over here, we have another life support atmosphere processing station. And then over here is the Stellar Cartography Lab, where the Stellar Cartography Department can do their work without using that main giant hologram room. And there's lots of computers in here. And now, I think we've seen everything that's on this deck. So we're gonna head back to the turbo lift. Now you can actually go around and get directly to the turbo lift here, but I'm just gonna cut back through the computer core here. So that was deck 4, and now we'll drop down to deck 5. This one opens to the bottom of the shuttle bay here. Here you can see the bottom of the shuttle elevator. And there's a couple more shuttles parked down here. And another of the little pods. And I don't think we looked at the interior of the pod. These ones are so tiny, there's not much in here. So that's finally it for the shuttle bay, and we'll move on. Now we'll come out onto deck 5 here, where this is the next level of the computer core. So we'll come to this door here and start exploring. So we'll skip around this computer area, more crew quarters in here. And as you can see, as the crew gets lower in rank, the quarters get smaller. So this is heading up the front here. More crew quarters here. Then over here we have a holodeck. This one is turned off, so you just see the grid pattern. And there's 4 holodecks located around the ship here. There's another one directly across, same thing. This one's turned off. But we will see one turned on later on. Now we're at the very front here. And this whole outer ring on this deck is all the lifeboats. So you come through here, and this is the escape pod. A bunch of people would sit in here, and this would blast out of the ship. And one thing I was proud of myself on this one for is these lifeboats actually line up with the lifeboats on the outside of the hull. So basically everything on the left-hand side is lifeboats. Just each slightly different tunnel to get to them based on the hull shape. Here's some more backup generators. Like I said, there's a lot of system rooms that repeat on this thing. Here's another structural integrity field generator room. More lifeboats. Here's just a simple storage room. And we keep heading on, and you can see there's just tons of lifeboats on here. There's another atmosphere processing room for this deck. And we'll keep heading around. Here we have some power couplings here. Then this heads back towards the center, but we'll keep coming around this outer corridor. There's lots and lots of lifeboats here. Here's another shield generator room, which we've seen what those look like before. And all of these lifeboats you can go into, they are all completed. There's another emergency battery room. Here we have the APS power taps, where main power is coming off from the warp core. And there's windows on this power room. Kinda doesn't make sense, but the model has windows back here. And as we cruise around here, there's the bottom rear of the shuttle bay. And here's the matter injector, which is the very top of the warp core here. You can see the warp core goes all the way down. And we do have this ladder that runs the entire height of the warp core, so you can get to the warp core on any deck just from this ladder. But we'll come back up to the deck we were on here. Behind it, we have the warp core coolant tower. And we'll head back out. Over here we have the coolant reprocessing center. This is where the warp coolant filters itself, basically. Kind of like a radiator. And we'll keep on cruising here, more lifeboats. Here we have an enlisted crew barracks. So for the people that are not officers, they have to share these multiple room bunk beds here. And that's why we have showers located throughout the ship, because these rooms don't have bathrooms. And we'll keep cruising here. Here's more barracks. And they're all pretty much the same thing, just slightly different again, based on the shape of the corridors and the hull. Now we'll come over here. Here's the port gangway, which leads up to the next deck. Here's some showers. And here's holodeck 2. And this one is actually turned on. So this is supposed to be like a little forest area where you can go fishing. Obviously it's hard to make the illusion look real in Minecraft, where you have to make a fake sky. But here's a little pond to go fishing, because it seems like in the show a popular program to run was streams, rivers, and ponds. So this is the holodeck that's turned on. And we saw those showers. Trying to figure out which way I want to go here. More crew quarters here. An emergency supply room. Even more crew quarters. So this is all pretty much same stuff we've seen before. I'm actually going to go the other way. Emergency supply locker. There's another barracks. More crew quarters. And here's a water reclamation plant where water is processed and refiltered. And that's pretty much it for everything on this deck. All the stuff we haven't seen is just repeated from what we have seen. So we're actually going to head back to the turbo lift and go to the next deck. So we'll come back in the turbo lift here, and we'll drop down. And we'll head forward first here. So now we're on deck 6. And here we have the upper levels of the cargo bays. And these cargo bays are massive here. And you can see the outline of the door to the cargo bay in the floor where they would load the ship. And here's the cargo bay control room up here. And there's another cargo bay on the other side. Except if you look down there, you can see the floor airlock for loading is open on here, and you can see the ground below. So we'll leave the cargo bay. here. Here's the main lounge at the front. And this would be like what 10 Forward was on the show. So we have these massive windows, and you can see they're inverted now because we're actually on the bottom of the saucer section. But you can see the ground below down there. So that's the main lounge here. Then, much like the upper decks here, the outer edge of this deck is all officers' quarters, which have their own bedroom here, and these big windows looking down. And we'll keep going here. More officers' quarters here, just same as before, shaped slightly different based on the hull curve. More quarters. Here's a shield generator again for this deck. And over here we have the ship's gardens. And this is where there's a greenhouse here, and they're actually growing food. So they can have fresh food if they want. And there's lots of big windows here, and all kinds of plants. So that's the gardens here. Over here we have the agriculture department offices. They have a little conference table here. And we'll keep moving. Here's an emergency supply room. And some more barracks. These barracks actually have a good view. So you can see the bottom of the warp engine back there and the engineering hall out the windows. Coming to the back of the saucer here. Here's another barracks, again with good views here. Then we're coming to the back here. There's a Jeffries tube. And that actually gives warp core access on this deck here. There's the warp core. And then back here is a maintenance area. And again, because of the back of the neck, had all these windows back here, I had to put something, but it really doesn't fit with where the warp core goes. Then there's a Jeffries tube on this side. It comes to a little power coupling room over here. And we'll come back around. Come back out here. Here's the warp core for this level. Come back out into the corridor. Here's the rear turbo lift here. There's some showers back here. More barracks. Emergency locker. Here's the botany office. So they have a conference room here. And then the department head's office. And then up over on this side is the arbitorium. And this is kind of just like an area the crew can come to relax with natural trees and wildlife and stuff, and big observation windows here. And there's paths going around it, some benches. More benches over here, and a little reflecting pool here. And we'll move on. And we're just gonna head back to the turbo lift real quick because the rest of this deck is just more of the same. So we'll come in the turbo lift here. And actually we need to drop down in the center to get to this next deck. So here's deck 7. Now these decks are a lot smaller because we're on the bottom of the saucer. Here we're coming out into the cargo bays here, and actually on the cargo bay floor proper. So you can get a sense of just how big these cargo bays are. Like I said, this one has the door closed. And then the cargo bay on the opposite side has this big floor door open. And you can see there are 2 doors, so it's an actual airlock. And it drops down, and that's where they load the ship. You can see the deflector dish down there. So that's the cargo bays. And we'll head forward here. Up here we have a structural integrity field generator and a shield generator. And then there's these big observation windows, which are located on the outer hull, but by the time I built the cargo bay there was really nothing to put behind them, so they just open up on a hallway. More batteries, more observation windows here, and there's a ring of lower lifeboats down here. So same thing, all the escape pod designs are the same, but just like before they do line up with the escape pod hatches on the outer hull. Some more observation windows, more lifeboats. We have another Jeffries tube maintenance area here with some power couplings on each side. And more observation windows. Like I said, there just wasn't room for anything, so these windows just open up on a hallway. Now you can see the engineering hall down there because we're already at the back of the saucer section. There's atmosphere processing on each side there. Here's a little access ladder that runs between decks. And it comes down to the next deck. And this deck is even smaller and has even more of these observation windows. So that was the back of it, and we're already on the side. This is one of the smallest decks. More observation windows. Up here we have the cargo airlock. So you get your spacesuits there, and you could come out into the cargo bay and leave the ship this way through this door. And there's the cargo bay above us. And we'll come back through here. There's another cargo airlock on this side. But of course this cargo bay's doors are shut, so it's all closed off in here. The other side's pretty much exactly the same, so we won't go around that whole tunnel. Over here, another short Jeffries tube to a maintenance area on each side. We'll come into the turbo lift here, and we actually have to come back up in order to go backwards here. So now we get to the back. There's the warp core. And now we can drop down at this back turbo lift. Now we'll drop back down to deck 8 at this rear turbo lift. And this opens up onto one of my favorite rooms, main engineering. So at the beginning here, we have this big engineering table. On this side, there's a little access way, which leads you down to the next deck here, but we'll come back up into main engineering. On this side, we have the isolinear chip banks. This is basically the back of the engineering computers. We have more computers over on this side, and the chief engineer's little office over here. So that's what that all looks like. And then we come in, and here's the main matter-antimatter reactor in the center of the warp core. And if you open it, the dilithium crystals are in there. Coming around the side, the warp plasma conduit comes off the warp core and heads out to the sides to the warp engine nacelles. Then behind this, it actually lines up with the back of the impulse engines. So here's the impulse fusion reactors in the impulse engine at the back here. And it all kinds of lines up at the same deck here. So there's the warp plasma conduit coming off the warp core, and it comes all the way down this wing. And then up this strut and into the actual warp nacelle. So now we're actually inside the warp nacelle here. And we gotta come up to the front of it. We're at the very front of the warp nacelle up here. We have the Bussard collectors, which collect interstellar hydrogen. And those are those big red lights at the front of the warp engines here. So that's what the Bussard collectors look like. And now through here is the warp engine control room. And it's actually 2 levels here that looks out over the warp plasma. And we can actually go down in there. So here's the warp plasma. And it comes together and then shoots down the entire length of the nacelle here. And you can see all the warp coils made of the copper blocks here. This comes all the way down to the back of the engine. And there is a Jeffries tube that runs up the center, and there's something at the very back, but we have to go up front to get back to access that. So we'll come back through the control room here. And we head back down the Jeffries tube. But instead of climbing down the ladder, we'll go straight to the back here. It's very long. When we get back here, there's another room at the back of the engine nacelle. And here's the off-axis warp field generator here at the very back. And then back here, there's actually a second floor, which is accessed right through here, and then up these stairs. This is a little control room that lets you see the top of this and see forward up the length of the nacelle. And we'll head back down and out of the warp nacelle here, because we've seen everything. And we'll come back out through main engineering here. Then up at the front of main engineering, there's a small bathroom over here. And then around this, we have some power couplings that are on each side, and a generator. And then an emergency battery room at the front up here. And we'll head back around to the turbo lift and we'll drop down a deck. Now this is deck 9 and it's in the neck, so it's fairly small here. Coming backwards, that's the Jeffries tube that leads up to engineering, and here's lower warp core access below the reactor. There's a bathroom over here, and here's the ship's main airlock. This is where everyone would board the ship if it was docked up at a starbase. So here's the airlock. There's one on each side, and it actually comes out, and you can see we're standing on the engineering hall now. The neck's not very big on this one. So we'll head back through here. And that's pretty much it for this deck here. So we'll drop down a deck to deck 10. And now we're in the engineering hall. At the very front is the deflector dish hardpoints. So this is the top of the deflector dish where it mounts into the ship here. We'll come around the corner. Lots of observation windows. There's a bathroom. Here's the machine shop for engineering, so if they ever need spare parts, they can use all this stuff to make those. And this hallway runs this whole top edge here. Here's the warp core access for this deck. And here's a Jeffries tube. And this one actually leads down and around to the next deck down there. Here's an atmosphere processing station for the secondary hull here. And then back here, this Jeffries tube leads to the outside of the engineering hull computer core here. And if we climb this ladder, this leads up to all the primary deuterium tanks for the ship's fuel, which I skipped when we were in main engineering up there. This leads out behind the warp core on this deck. So that's the fuel tanks, and we'll drop back down and head back out. Then we'll head aft here. Back here, we have some offices for the engineering department. There's another office in the rear turbo lift. And over here we have the ship's stasis vault, and this is where they would store items they find or items of importance locked in a stasis field. And we'll head back up here. On this side of the hull on this deck, this gives us actual access to the inside of the computer core down here. And then the atmosphere processors, warp core access from this side, the machine shop again, another bathroom, and we're back to the front turbo lift here. So that's deck 10. We'll move down to deck 11. So this is on the starboard side at the front. There's a power coupling up here. Then this ladder actually leads down to the next deck. And then there's a Jeffries tube right there. And that leads up to the deck above it through that ladder. So we'll come back out here and start moving back. Here's the warp core access for this deck. More of the same. We have a little damage control center here where the damage control crews would work out of. Here we have some engineering hall crew barracks. So there's actually crew that live down here. Then there's a generator room, a shield generator, structural integrity field generator. There's some showers for the crew that live on this deck. Another crew barracks here. Here's a solid waste processing for the engineering hall. And here's a pump room for pumping all the water and fluids around. And at the very back here we have the VIP guest quarters. And this is on the back top of the engineering hall. They have their own bathroom. And they have all these observation windows looking out and around. So you can see the warp engine up there and up there. So they have a great view of the aft end of the ship in this room here. There's a couple fancy beds and a replicator. So that's the VIP quarters here. And coming up the opposite side of this deck, there's another office here. And here's the water reclamation station for the engineering hall, where they recycle all the water. Up here there's another bathroom, a shield generator, and we'll come up and around here. Here's turbo lift access from this side of the deck, emergency battery room, another generator room, and a power coupling. Since we've seen those before, we won't go in there. So we're actually going to shoot back here, and we'll come to the rear turbo lift. So that was deck 11. We'll drop down to deck 12. Come around here. On this deck, here's another Jeffries tube that leads to a lower little maintenance area with a power conduit here. And we'll come back out of the tube. Here we have the ship's dojo. That's what this looks like. That quarter cuts to the other side. Here we have batteries and warp core access for this deck. Then over here we have another conference room. Coming across here there's a head. And up here is deflector control for the main deflector dish. So this is where all the power comes in to power that deflector dish at the front of the engineering hall. And just try to go around. It's kind of cramped, but trying to give a good look at everything in here. So that was deflector control. Then coming to the other side, up here there's another conference lounge. And then up here is actual ladder and stairway to the next deck, which we'll take because the rest of that deck we were just on is the same as the other side. So this leads to the next deck down. And here is a backup sick bay for the engineering hall. It's a little smaller than the primary one, but it has much of the same things. In case of emergencies, they could use this one if they were trapped down in the engineering hall for some reason. And you got another conference lounge here. there's the main turbo lift. Come around here, and this whole side on this deck is engineering hall lifeboats. And then here's the warp core access for this deck. Now this deck actually has the coolant tanks, so coming off the coolant tower, it comes in this room with all these warp coolant tanks here. So that was the coolant room. Like I said, more lifeboats over there. Here we have a damage control center, which we've seen before. And here we have an emergency transporter room, which is bigger than the main transporter rooms. These would be used by the engineering hall crew in an evacuation situation. Then more lifeboats there. And then coming around, here's the rear turbo lift. There's a storage room in here. And then there's actually another lounge down here. So when the engineering crew take their breaks, they don't have to go all the way up to the top of the ship. There's the rear turbo lift. And we'll head forward. More lifeboats all along this side. And in the middle, it's all the same room, so we'll skip right past that. We're getting towards the bottom of the ship now. So we're going to drop down. Now we're on the antimatter injector level at the bottom of the very bottom of the warp core. And then behind it, we have all the antimatter storage pods, which is what these things are supposed to be. So there's a bunch of antimatter storage pods. Then through here is the ship's antimatter generator, which can be used to generate antimatter in case of an emergency situation where they couldn't get back to base to refuel. Then along the side of this, there's another Jeffries tube here. That skips past all that to the front area of the ship on this lower level. There's a supply locker, a bathroom, and a battery room at the very front here. Now we'll come into the turbo lift, and we're actually dropping down into the weapons pod on the bottom of the ship. So we're inside the weapons pod now. Climb down this ladder. There's a little control area. And as we come up here to the front, you see the front torpedo launcher. And then we skip back here. And there's actually a rear torpedo launcher as well. And then these racks of slabs are supposed to be the storage magazines for all the photon torpedoes, which would load onto that middle bar above us and go to either torpedo launcher. And now that we've seen this lower weapons pod, we've made it through and seen every deck on the entire ship here. And there we have it, folks. We've completed our full tour of this Star Trek New Orleans class starship. I hope you enjoyed walking through this ship with me here. And thank you all for 500 subscribers. Everyone, have a great week and stay safe out there. And soon we'll be back with our normal tutorial videos. Take care, everyone.